Okay, so I thought we'd start off today's podcast. First of all, the Planeswalker podcast, episode number 1. Here it is today, long time in the making. Excited to be here with you guys doing this. And I thought we'd start off with, our newest, friend of ours, but now latest Mythic Invitational champion, Seth Manfield. Thought we'd talk all about his win. It was really exciting to test with you, Brad, Javier. That was like I don't know. It was really it was like a treat for me. I really enjoyed it. The three of you guys are like at the top of the competitive Magic mountain, if you will. So like getting to pick your brains and prepare for that tournament with you was awesome. And then watching you take it down was just like the cherry on the cake.
Yeah, I'm super happy just to be. This is our first episode, right? So hopefully this is going to be a lot of talking, not just about me, but just relationship with the Planeswalker podcast, just trying to help you all who are listening to this, watching this, to get better as a player. And that's our primary goal. And so for me, going into this Mythic Invitational, which, yes, you may already know that I won the tournament, which was awesome.
Some people
know. The games were honestly my favorite part about it. Wasn't just like, oh, like you won another tournament, yeah, whatever, Seth Manfield, blah 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 blah. Just kind of like just chalk it up. But the fact that people got to watch the games, I like on Arena, and got to give me that response of, oh, I thought you played really well. Like those are some of the most interesting games, best games I've seen in a long time. That made it more special to me than just like, oh, Seth Manfield won a tournament. But because you don't get to see it, it doesn't, I don't know, validate it as much. But I was just really happy with the community response. And getting to watch, because the coverage, there was a coverage hiccup, as some people might know. So I got to kind of rewatch on my 30th birthday. I was just sitting at home, just watching coverage. And it was like, I was hearing like Cedric or Corey just talking about how insane of a player I was. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like I can just sit back, relax, and just listen to people talk about me winning games of Magic. Like, this is pretty fun.
Best birthday ever.
Yeah. And most people don't know this, but the testing part of this actually involved all three of us. We were all testing for the tournament together. Obviously, you guys weren't qualified for the Invitational, but you were testing for the qualifier weekend, which was lined up pretty well with what we were doing. So I want to say thank you to you guys, and then just kind of, we can maybe talk about how it's not, I think that a lot of players think about this like idea in their head of how there's this perfect process for testing for a tournament, and that's how you arrive and you break the format and all of this and that. In reality, and you all probably saw this firsthand, like it's not really like that.
Yeah, I was really surprised. I thought there was going to be like this well-oiled machine. Like I was going to step into some sort of corporate, like, okay, you do this, you do that, you take the point, like, some sort of like very structured. But it was more like, I don't know, like a bunch of painters trying to make a mural together. It's like, okay, you know what? You feel out that space over there on that side, and I'm going to work over here. And then at the end of the day, when it came to crunch time, like there was some structure for sure. But when it came down to the end, when it was the last couple of days, it was like, I just kind of feel like it should be this. Let's tweak these. Let's tweak that. And like, it was very eye-opening, kind of being a fly on the wall, seeing how everything worked.
Yeah, I also really enjoyed it, and thanks again to Seth to give me that opportunity. I really spammed a lot of games. I think the person who spammed the most games is Javier. I have no idea. He maybe doesn't sleep. I don't know. But yeah, he definitely spammed a lot. I spammed a lot as well, and it was always fun to test this new iteration. And I remember when Brett watched me, I played online, and then we just run into Ivan Flock. And he was like, okay, no, we have to do it like this. Just watch what he plays and give up. And then we tried to collect data what other players play. And every time we run into someone who participates, I just gave up. So I tanked rank, but it was fun.
It's funny because I had 6 wins in one of because the metagame challenges were going on at the same time as the testing, and I was like, well, do I want a ladder or do I want to play in the metagame challenges to get a bunch of boosters? So I was sitting there in the metagame challenges, and then I was at 6-0, and I actually got paired against Yvonne, and I was like, I asked the team, hey, like, should I concede? But in the back of my mind, I was like, "There's no way I'm conceding. Like, I want the 7 wins. Like, I'm not just gonna concede." I was playing the exact Sultai deck, and I was just like, "Okay, like whatever." And then like Yvonne like mulls to 4, and then I start playing I go Overgrown Tomb Thoughtseize or something, and then he just concedes, and I was like, God, so he got me the other way.
Yeah.
Leveled him.
Tactic.
Yeah, they got me the other way, but it's weird, like how there's like this, like if you're streaming or if you're talking about on social media, or even if you're just playing against someone on Arena that's also another competitor in the tournament, or even a friend of the competitor who's be like, hey man, I just played against Seth and he's playing this, or I just played against X person and I just wanted to like, especially like that is kind of this weird dynamic. I guess it wasn't just that, but it just felt like Goblins was just so overwhelmingly popular, and it was just a deck that players were gravitating towards, that I think that as we approached the tournament, the target just got bigger and bigger for that deck.
Yeah, definitely. I think Brad also said it will be 35%ish, and it ended up almost 35%. I think he had a good read on that one as well. It's interesting.
I think he might have said 25, but I think it was over what he had predicted. But
okay.
Of course, the format is changing a bit now, because Zendikar hadn't been out when we did played the Mythic Invitational, but yeah, it wasn't until the last day that I really figured out that I was playing the Sultai deck. It was Javier that was playing the most, as you already mentioned, and he's like so amazing to test with him, because he's gonna just be grinding and playing games. And like once he locked on Sultai, which was like a few days earlier, I was kind of unsure, and I don't know that I would have played it unless Brad and Javier were already on it. And then it does fit my playstyle. Like I like that sort of game, and I felt like just by making a few changes to the deck that I could make the Goblins matchup better. And it seemed like the field was condensing in a way that they're like if we go back 2 months or 3 months, there was like 20 different decks in Historic, and you could play against any one of them on the ladder. And yeah, Goblins was a thing, but it felt like pretty beatable. But then the list became more and more tuned, and it just became, as the tournament got closer and people continued to test and continue to grind games, that the format also condensed in a way where, and we saw that with the percentages of what people played, it was like you had Goblins, then you had Sultai, then you had Jund, and like after that, it was like, yeah, there was a few control decks that did really poorly, but there wasn't any like consolidated momentum behind any of the other decks.
Yeah, I'm really interested. How did you guys come to that conclusion that Goblins was going to be so popular and that the meta was condensing around only a few decks? I feel like I was confused by why you guys thought that, but looking back, I was not playing as much sort of the last, I don't know, maybe 4 days before like those revelations came to light. So maybe I was just kind of missing it on the ladder. Did it come from your experiences on the ladder, or to talking with other players, or like a combination of the two?
Yeah, I mean, it was just experiences on the ladder, and then talking to people on stream, and then just kind of like realizing that a lot of players, like also knowing what people have played in the past. Like we know that some of these players have played with these sacrifice decks in Standard, and someone that really likes the sac decks might just, want to port that over to Historic. Whereas if you're playing with like a blue-white auras deck, or like a mono blue, or like a deck like that, that maybe is, or even mono green to some extent, a deck that is popular on a little bit more popular than it was in the tournament, more popular on the arena ladder, you might not feel as comfortable with it picking it up. So it was primarily just experience on the ladder and talking to people. I think Ifro was probably the best person scouting. He like went out of his way to kind of just check out what people were doing, whether it be on stream or anything like that. And then knowing that like if one person from one testing group is playing a deck, it probably means they're all playing it. Like you find one person's playing goblins, it's like, okay, so that's really like 10 people because they're all working together. And it also just felt like from playing the games internally, because we played against each other, that goblins was the best deck. Because if you played any of the previous versions of decks against goblins, it just felt like goblins was going to win. Now, granted, we didn't like test the sack versus goblins matchup that extensively because you only have so much time to play, right? But it just felt like, at least playing from the Sultai side, Sultai was never winning that matchup until we made a lot of changes to the deck, and it feels like that was like a pretty obvious place that other people were going to do the same thing and reach the same conclusions. But they weren't necessarily going to put 4 Aether Gusts in their deck, and Languishes, and other sweepers, and main deck counter spells, and all of the stuff that we did. I think that was like the next level that we went to with the deck that other players just didn't get to, because they weren't able to. Like, I think the reason why we were able to find the deck that we did is because we were able to trust ourselves in that prediction, I guess. And I'm happy that we did. It definitely paid off.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely tested it a lot, and it was also really funny that I think on Saturday, so the last weekend before the tournament, Ben dropped the bomb in our Discord and posted that fog list with the 100% win rate against goblins, right? And so everyone was like, wow, okay. It was like 3 a.m. for me. I was like, okay, I need to test this now. Then I tested and I came to the conclusion you can technically not win against goblins. In the first iteration, there was no ref, nothing in the list, because Arena just crashes. Arena will crash at one point if the goblin player decides to make 500 plus tokens. And then we tested this multiple times, and it was me and Ifro and Brad who tried to see like which clock goes down depending on which situation it is. Because technically you can still win, right? If opponent's clock goes down while they do something, you still win. It's not a nice win, but it's a way to win the game. And I remember we were thinking about if that's okay for WotC to have a, let's say the finalists, you win because you defeat client, right? That would be really interesting at that point. And then later on I added the 2 ref just to make sure that this doesn't happen.
Yes, that's the fog deck trying to survive for forever against the goblins player, and they get a Cranko down, and they just make like more and more and more goblin tokens to the point where Arena can't handle it anymore. And you like click on one action, and it'll take about 2 minutes for the action to complete on screen. Yeah, that was kind of crazy. Seth, I didn't get to see a lot of your top 8 run because I was waiting for it on Sunday and they had the delay. Why don't you tell us a little bit about? I saw that you lost the first round because that was before the last day of coverage. You went into the losers bracket because it was double limb, and then obviously you went on quite the run.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about my tournament a bit. So I started day 1 5-2, got paired against 6 goblins, and so I was like, okay, this is exactly what I thought. And then day 2. Beat 3 Sultai mirrors, ended up getting mana screwed a couple of games against Jund. So it put me in a spot where I was like, had 4 losses going to the last round, and I thought, okay, I'm playing for top 16. I think I was in like 13th place going to the last round. But it turns out people even ahead of me in the standings had drawn because they wanted to make top 16 for the grand finals. And I got paired up against paired against someone who had better breakers than me, and Chris Gavardik, who was also on goblins, of course. And so I was able to, I mean, it sucked for him because he was playing for not only top 8, but also grand finals, which I had already had locked up. from the Players Tour finals. But anyways, I did beat him, and those Goblins games, a lot of them came down to. It's not like our deck even just crushes Goblins. It's by any I think I may have implied that by the way I've been talking about and the fact that I've had a good win rate against Goblins, but you also have to navigate the games really well, which I felt like I did because I knew the matchup well. And kind of managing that, the Thoughtseize, the sweepers, the amount of threats you need in your deck, and just kind of all of this, when you can play Nissa, untap a land that produces 2 mana, and then turn the corner. Now you have an Aether Gust up, or a Stroke, or an Eliminate. And so it just kind of felt like that was a matchup that I knew more than my opponents, and I was able to win that match, and ended up just kind of luck was on my side for this tournament. I was in 8th place, so I didn't have to do as much I guess work as maybe some of the other top 8 competitors that got in with fewer losses than I did. But anyways, that was my run to the top 8. It turns out that I did lose to Luis Salvato in the Swifts. Then I got paired against him in my first match in top 8, which I was like, okay. My mindset against him was I cannot lose this match. It's not a great matchup for me because it's Rakdos Arcanist, right? But my mindset was this guy beat me out for Player of the Year, which is still pretty fresh in my mind. Because going back a few years, we were tied. This was the last Player of the Year award that actually got awarded in Magic's history. We were tied going into the end of the year. Had that epic playoff, and he beat me. So I wanted to get him back, and then losing to him was deflating because it meant that I believe this was Saturday we played. And so it meant that I only played one match for the whole day. I was stuck watching people like Nassif and Luis Salvato just play a bunch more matches and win. And they figured out all of the upper bracket, and you've got Nassif kind of just waiting there. He's already made the finals, whereas I'm sitting, I'm slumping in my chair at home. I'm just how many matches do I have to win to have a shot at this thing? Which is kind of what I was thinking. But I also knew that it was kind of a new day. And sometimes for me, it's I don't know that I would have been able to do what I did if I just played another match on Saturday or whatever. It was kind of refocusing, recalibrating my mindset. I knew I was playing against Ken for the first match of Sunday, and he was on Goblins. He was the only Goblins in top 8. So even though Ken is a great player, everyone in top 8 is a great player. I also was the matchup that I was the most comfortable playing from a gameplay perspective. And so I was able to beat Ken. I made one of the plays that I'm really happy I made looking back. And I know looking at Danny right now that he knows the play I'm talking about.
It was just the perfect thing about that play was that he actually drew the Muxus next turn. That's that made it just perfect. So tell us about that one-off pulse you had in the deck there.
Yeah, so we're playing one pulse in our deck, and I ended up pulsing away. And it's funny because I actually bored out Maelstrom Pulse against Goblins. I boarded it out for game 2, but I Maelstrom Pulse the treasure token. But before that, so I have a total of 9 mana. I attack with the 6/6 Krasis. He's now at 8. And so then I go, or I attack with an Uro. I have a 6/6 Krasis back blocking. And he's at 8. He's got a few goblins on board, and he's got 5 lands. He's got a Skirk Prospector, a token, and so I go Krasis for 2. But I don't think people were thinking about the fact that I also killed the Skirk Prospector. He had a Goblin Chieftain in play, but my first play that I made was kill the Prospector, and so it's why on earth would I kill the Prospector unless I was going to kill the treasure also? So it was a multi-step play. It wasn't okay, I'm gonna kill the treasure. It was okay, I'm gonna kill the Prospector, which means now you can't activate that, and I'm gonna get rid of the treasure, so now you for sure only have 5 lands. And because I'm in a good spot, even basically the way I lose this game is to Muxus. And so if you look at it through that lens, it's definitely the right play, but it's also and the fact that I was able to have like a guaranteed lethal next turn. But if you're not thinking in that way and being on the stage that I was, like, it's easy to just kind of get nervous and make another play, even though if you were sitting and thinking it through, you would probably make the same play I made. But just being against Ken Yukihiro in that moment, it's hard to make those plays. So I was really happy that I made that play and kind of sealed up the 2-0 victory against him. And then I just basically had all red decks, but I played a couple matches against Jund, 2 different versions of Sacrifice, and my 4th match of the day was against Salvato again, who was on Rakdos Arcanist. Because we didn't put that much graveyard hate in our deck, we weren't expecting that much of it. We also felt like Raftigger's Cage against some of these Jund decks, like, even though it's good against Company and it's good against some of the like cat synergies and stuff, it's also just a card that we thought people were going to be ready for, and because it hurts our own Uros, we just didn't end up putting that much graveyard hate in the deck. It doesn't stop the Godpharaoh's gift deck, but in this particular matchup, I wish I had more graveyard hate, and I felt like I was a dog because of that. But we had some insane games for sure. Not game 1 so much because he got mana screwed, but game 2, I was like in a good position. He came back. Game 3, I ended up like top decking in Anissa and grinding him out. So yeah, there was a lot of top decks. I think I won the round before where my opponent was attacking me with like a 10-10 Corvold, and I got through that. So it was like a whirlwind, but it also felt like I just got into a groove and just a mindset that I was going to win the tournament, to be honest with you. And then against Nassif, I was pretty tired because that was my 5th and 6th match of the day, where I had gotten like a 5-minute, 10-minute breather between the matches. So I was just like, go. Like up, like who are you playing next? And so, yeah, I was able to play against Nassif. I think players are going to remember that play that he made against me, not activating the priest, because there was a situation where he had a priest untapped and he had the opportunity to activate it and in response to my eliminate, and chose not to. He also had an opportunity on his turn. He had a couple opportunities to activate it, chose not to. I don't think it's like a strict error. Like, as it turns out, yeah, I had the Extinction event, which was the perfect card to have as a one of. He certainly had reasons not to activate it there, like the fact that now I would have enough cards in my graveyard for Uro. So there was like different reasons to activate, different reasons not to activate. Also, from my perspective, there was reasons to cast the eliminate and to not cast the eliminate. And so I chose to cast it on the priest to force him to make a decision. And he ended up making the decision that worked perfectly for me. So that was kind of the turning point in the match. Because if he activates, I probably lose that game and I'm down 1 match. Instead, I ended up coming back, winning game 3, and then winning the second match. And I didn't feel like I played like, that great against him because I was pretty tired, but it was just good enough, and the deck kind of carried me. I feel like the Sultai deck, one of the main reasons we wanted to play it was because we thought we had a good Jund matchup. It's not like it's like, oh, we're crushing Jund or something like that, but the way we had our decks built with the Cry of the Carnariums, with, the Elder Gargoth and the Cyborg was nice, but just kind of being able to outmaneuver them, and that's kind of how it played out.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I couldn't imagine what a 30th birthday to be able to take down one of Magic's largest tournaments and then watch yourself do it on your 30th birthday. That's just fucking awesome. And I can't wait for the next one. This grand final of like the coverage and I don't know, the games and stuff from the Mythic Invitational. It's the first one that I've gotten really sucked into. Actually, ironically, The other one was the one that you unleashed, Blue Green Flash, along with Brad and Javier. That was the last Mythic Invitational that I was really excited about. Now this last one was great too, and now I'm excited to see the grand final. I didn't really care that much about it before this tournament. I was like, oh, it's just like another tournament, and it's just like cash money. But like after watching those matches, they were so exciting, and we get historic and standard, and like just a small pool of the best players in the world. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. It's very interesting. You just talked about the Simic Flash. That's actually when I started trying to compete in Magic. That's not even that long ago, but I remember at my local game store, like literally everyone was playing that Simic Flash list. Everyone.
Yeah, it was super popular. That's
Yeah.
kind of when I got back into Magic again, competitively a bit too. So Zendikar's finally here. We finally got the rotation that I know and I think probably everyone has been looking forward to for quite some time. Brand new standard, and man, I gotta say it feels good. I am enjoying standard like I haven't in literal months, years. I don't know. I've enjoyed some standard, I guess, but this new standard is pretty great. I think people are kind of worried about Omnath being a little too OP. But I've had some success beating the Omnath deck that you guys have as well. So I feel like the jury's still out. I'm not ready to condemn Omnath and the format just yet, but I'm interested to hear your guys' first impressions of new standard.
So, well, first of all, I have to say I'm always happy when sets rotate out, so we have a new meta and we can brew and brew and brew and brew. But I think this is the first time it felt so fast that there's one deck that just dominates, like instantly this fast, right? Yesterday I streamed for 5 hours. 5 hours long I played against Omnath. 5 hours.
I'm giving it a month until something gets banned. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat. I mean, imagine I'm streaming 5 hours and play against the same deck over and over. So I just played the blue-white deck. You also were playing.
To be fair,
Seth.
you are playing a blue-white control deck, so you probably played 2 matches in that 5 hours.
6 matches. 6 matches,
Okay,
actually.
so many matches.
So, yeah, but I took Seth's deck and I made it the anti-Omnath deck. And it paid off. I won all the games, right? I mean, it's just a million of counters and then get card value and try to just grind them out, right? But it's really awkward to see a format with a list so early that can go over the top so fast, turn 4, in standard, while we don't have a lot of sets. Usually it happens when you have like multiple sets and you have more combinations, right? But now it's just like 2 cards, and then that's it.
I mean, Garuda did that at the beginning of that format.
Yeah, but Garuda is easy counter. It's like, that's a scam, right? Everyone knew that this will happen.
Sure.
Like, people said this to Goblins, but we knew Goblins is strong. But I think this Omnath list, it looks really fun to play. I love Teamer decks. I love Ramp decks. Nothing against it. But just looking at it, what you can do with it is really ridiculous. Because every card that you play gives you card advantage. So you can never trade 1 for 1, which is a problem. So counter is basically your best choice. Spot removals is kind of awkward. You just need to counter it.
I agree with you, but I also think like there's things that the Omnath deck can do to combat the counterspell decks if they start gaining popularity. And then there's also the fact of playing against the ladder, whereas playing against like really good opponents. Like, I'm not saying, I don't know. I guess I don't know the strength of the opponents you were playing against, but I know that I played, and we could maybe talk about some of the changes you made to my list, because blue-white control was, I just kind of felt like, okay, I don't want to try to go under a deck that has a creature that is, gaining 4 life every turn, and also has another, also has Uro, and just has like, this insane amount of life gain in it. And so from my perspective, I thought, okay, we can just beat them by 1 for 1ing with counter spells, and then we have like some card advantage to just kind of go over the top in the late game, like you were saying. And it was working for me on the ladder. I put, 4 rewinds in my deck, 4 Essence Scatters, some other counter spells. there's like some removal here or there, but it was mostly just like counter, card draw, etc. to be able to stop. Because I think, as you were saying, answering the cards before they enter the battlefield is the key, because if you let Omnath resolve and then you get rid of it, or if you let Uro into play and then you get rid of it, they've still already drawn the card. They've gotten some value off of it. Like, okay, I'm going to use my Shadow the Sky on your Uro. It's like, no, like that's not going to necessarily pay off. Because then and also the thing is if you tap out during your main phase, they can just untap and just like play an ultimatum or play Escape the Wilds and just like completely go over the top. So I was playing in a tournament last night, which was I played this match against Oliver too, where it was just so awkward. I guess maybe I just drew the wrong part of my deck, which can happen. But like there was one game, the first game, where I just didn't have the amount of counter spells that I needed for stuff. And then there was the next game where I think he drew like 3 Mystical Disputes or something. And I had just all counter spells in my hand. I didn't have a Shark Typhoon. I didn't even have a castle. I didn't have any card draw. I didn't have any like threats. So I was just sitting there with a bunch of counters, not doing anything. It's like, okay, go. Like I couldn't do anything at the end of his turn. He was just like passing to me. It was just like one of the most frustrating games. And then like eventually I just like tried to like get the Yori on and cast it, but then he was able to use that window. So just like it was just like resolving one Escape the Wilds that he forced through. But then like once you resolve that, it's like 5 new. It's just snowballs. So like once, and it was just one of the more frustrating games I've played. But that deck is just like the amount of mana you can generate from the Lotus like Cobra from everything. It's just so frustrating because once it gets going, it just goes completely berserk, and you have to be able to answer every piece of the puzzle to be able to win.
Yeah, I took your list, tested it, and I had the same problem the first 3 games. I missed counters. And so what I did, I added more counters. And then I was like, maybe it doesn't work against too many aggro decks, but then I just created the sideboards to deal with the aggro decks. And then I think that should work as well. But if you have a million counters, I mean, the games I played, they played Dispute and Negate sideboard. So they were already equipped for that play, but I still managed because I just play 4 Disputes as well. Like, even your lands are counters. I mean, like, literally everything I have is countered.
Yeah.
And there's one card that actually, I think is a sleeper, won me, I would say, 50% of the games. Ashiok's Erasure. I played 2 Ashiok's Erasure main. I took their Omnath and their Ultimatum. It's just gone.
Surprisingly good. Yeah, that card was a bit of a joke when it first came out. I was like, this is like, no, like people playing this, I'm like, no, what are you doing? But I've been locked out of games when it hit an important card so many times now that I'm like, yeah, respect. I get it. Like, no one's playing Disenchants. That's a 4 mana, counter that spell, and don't worry about any Ember Cleaves, Omnaths, like whatever scary card it hits for the rest of the game. So that card's legit for sure.
It also exiles, which against Uro, it's like, okay, you can't even bring it back now. So that can be huge. Like I was playing 1 to 2, and then I had like 1 Deny the Divine. But then it's also like I also have 4 Rewinds, which maybe you had as well. Yeah. Rewind is also really good. So like you're competing with Rewind, because Rewind you're able to untap all your lands and then like play something else also. But the nice thing about being an enchantment is that you're able to discard it to your Thirst. But also not being like you want enough enchantments in the deck for sure, but you also want enough instants and sorceries to be able to find off the Salundi, the land that looks at 6 cards and you choose an instant or sorcery. So it's a sweet deck. I think Blue Eye Control is sweet. And like I played against Gruul and just like I've been beating the aggro decks with it, so it's possible that I need to like tune actually still like go further towards the counterspell package like you are.
There's also one card I want to mention, and I think that's maybe a controversial card right now. It's a 2-mana Enchanted Condylum, something like this.
Oh, Confounding Conundrum, yeah.
Yeah, Conundrum. I did main 4. I understand that people say maybe it doesn't have that much impact against the deck, but it actually locks them from Escapes and the Teamer Ultimatum. Because if they Teamer Ultimatum and hit 4 lands, they have to just get 4 lands back on their hand. And I had once 2 of them in the play, And the opponent was like, yeah, I think I have only chance. I need to do the ultimatum. They hit 4 lands. They had like 1 land left or something like this, or like 2 or 3 lands. It was really fun to watch, right? And it is discardable to first against the matchups where you don't need it, so it's okay. And you can still bounce with Yarn to get a card draw. Because of those 2 reasons, I mained that. If I wouldn't play Yorion or first, I think it's too weak. But just having this extra additional enchantment there is definitely nice.
Yeah, I think having those extra things like Thirst and Yorion, ways to get more value out of it, maybe makes it acceptable. I think on its own though, like I tried it, and also like you're playing control deck. I tried it on like the Rogue deck. I tried it in Teamer Adventurers, and it did some stuff sometimes. Occasionally, I was like, okay, like they can't just go off here with whatever Uro or whatever it was that they had, or their Fabled Passage. They couldn't like track it and go off. But I found that it didn't do enough for those decks, at least. And that could just be a symptom of those decks not being very good. Also, they didn't really have like a lot of removal for the snake. So, they were still able to like gain mana that way. Or even if they had to, play a land and bounce a land back to their hand, they'd still get like a couple activation, or they get a couple more mana for that turn. But yeah, that card's an interesting one for sure. It's a nice design. I think I'm interested to see that card be played in more decks for sure.
One card I think we could see some of pop up in the 4-color deck sideboards if control starts going in this direction is just play Shark Typhoons. Like Shark Typhoon is still, you could just play a grindy game against control. It's just like, okay, if they go all counters, you just go make a 5/5 Shark, and then it's just like right now, I think there is a control deck you can build if you know what the Omnath decks are doing to be favored against Omnath. And I do believe that. But if Omnath then in turn changes their deck, and so it's like this it's this dance. I'm still gonna. I'm not caving in yet, because playing Omnath right now just feels like you've given up almost, because everyone is doing it. And so it's just like, all right, you're just going to be the lame like Omnath player like everyone else. I don't think I'm so happy, Jason. I'm so happy that you came in and said that you think the format is open, because and that you won the Bash Bros tournament with Gruul, which I was watching, by the way, and that was just wonderful to watch you do that. And there are Embercleave is a really powerful card. So, going under the deck, it's a possibility, as Jason has shown.
Yeah, so that was the next thing I was going to touch on. So this is where I'm at with Standard. So I'm a little bit surprised that you guys are like, oh, it's too good, something needs to get banned, or you think something will be banned. When one, you guys are having a lot of success going like over top, like controlling Omnath. And then 2, I have had a lot of success, and other people have as well, going kind of through Omnath, either with Gruul, which I won the Bash Bros podcast with, and other people have done quite well with, or also Roomty, notorious mono green aficionado, said that he was something like he went like 14-2, 16-2 on the ladder yesterday, up to like number 4 or number 3, I think, just going right through Omnath. So I think if you can go through it and you can control it, like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like, I mean, obviously the deck can evolve. I think we're, at stage 1 of Omnath. It definitely does do pretty busted things, but it doesn't seem like, it doesn't feel like other decks like Oko, like where you're just like, oh, literally you play Oko or you lose. There was no other choice. This doesn't feel that way at all to me. So I'm a little surprised to see you guys say that you think something's going to be banned when all 3 of us are having success beating the deck. Like, I feel like we're back to the Goblins thing where it's like, oh, that's the best deck. I'm like, but we keep beating it. Like, I didn't understand. Goblins is a little bit different. Goblins is kind of ridiculous. But talk about that a little bit. Why do you guys still think it's so busted? Do you think that Omnath is going to evolve? Do you think that what it's doing is just so powerful that eventually they'll find the right formula, like you're talking about with Sharks or whatever they need to combat our new strategies against it?
I just think that as a Magic card, it's just too good. I mean, alongside the other cards in the format, there's enough color fixing where it seems like it's not hard to cast it on turn 3. It's just not. Like, you have Lotus Cobra, you have like the other Mana Dork if you want to play it. You've got a bunch of fixing lands. Like, this is oftentimes turn 3. Sometimes it's not until turn 4, but okay, just having a 4/4 that draws that 4 mana 4/4 that draws a card, like, that's already okay. That's a good card. And then once you start adding on all the other stuff that, I mean, it's like it just feels so painful. It's just unbelievable. Like, some of the things it is able to do is just like the most disgusting. I don't know how you're beating it. Like, I guess I need to play more with Gruul, or maybe test that matchup out, because how do you beat an Omnath?
Oh,
like,
okay.
you don't have removal for it.
No, of course you do. You got lots of. What are you talking about? You got lots of. Okay, so first off, they've got Cobras and that 1/1 for 2, right? So you have 2 creatures that have 1 toughness. So you play 4 Stomp, and then Croaky's was playing 4 of that, like, land that deals 1 damage. So
that's 1 and 2 damage removal. Okay, that gets rid of the
okay. So now Omnath's not coming out until turn 4. So now you have Primal Might. In the main deck, I was playing 2. You also are just like, if you're on the play and they're just like a 4/4 on turn 4, you're like, that's cute. Like even if they're going to gain 4 life, like, no. Have you met like 5/5s with Embercleave? Because that's what Gruul deck is doing day in, day out, right? You got Mammoth on 3, you've got Lovestruck Beast on 3. You're typically curving out, playing a giant creature on 3, and if you're on the play, they're like turn 3 pass or turn 3 Earl all the time. And you're like Embercleave hit you for a bunch, or even if you don't do it that turn, next turn they're like Omnath. Like, they're just way too slow. And then out of the board, you've got Red Cat Melee, like 1 mana instant speed kill Omnath. And then there's also the new 2 mana sorcery, deal 4 damage to a planeswalker or creature. So, like, current builds are just way too slow to keep up with Gruul, and Mono Green might even be better.
Well, I think there's definitely room that aggro decks with a good draw and on the play win a set against Omnath. But I was watching Nassif playing for the first time Omnath today, and when a player like Nassif just plays this, he didn't lose, huh? He was like number 9 or some stuff in the end. He was just like, he did things with this deck, and he was just smiling there. And with his big evil smile,
you do make a good point. You do make a good point. But, like, just refresh my memory. Who did Seth beat in the finals again?
Nassif,
yeah. Who did I beat in the finals of that GP?
Nassif,
that's right. Okay,
sure.
Yeah, okay. So we'll get Nassif on here. I'll see how he lives.
But I mean, if you play against Omnath player like I played, right, and they have a strange version, because he thought about this list a lot, right? Like, he has a bit of a different version. He also has more removal, and like, just the way he plays it, he has, I think, less over the top cards than, like, so many Omnath decks are just way too greedy, right?
Yes.
They just want to do their thing, right? And he balanced it out really well. And if you have a balanced deck, and that's what Seth said, that has more like diversity against, let's say, an aggro deck or a control deck, it gets harder. That is for sure.
If you're Omnath, you can play removal. Like, you don't have to. If you don't have to play a creature on turn 2. You can just play a removal spell. You can, and then you can play Uro and Omnath, and it's like, okay, like, and now I'm just going over the top of you. Like, I don't know. I mean, I can play the 2 mana 4 damage in my Omnath deck. Why can't I play that card? Like,
that's why.
Like,
I mean, I agree with you, Jason, that us saying there has to be a ban right now while we're winning against it is strange, but I think the potential of this deck is still, like, on the floor right now, and there's definitely a high ceiling, and we don't know yet. I mean, it's literally like a week, right? But I want to hear your opinion on Clover, because I saw multiple people talk about Clover again, and Aaron Gertl made a post, probably you saw it, right? I heard rumors that Clover with 4 mainboard dispute is a thing now. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a thing now. Okay, to touch on real quick to wrap up there, I kind of agree with you guys on the Omnath thing. I think that what it does in combination with some other cards is, like, kind of just a step above the rest of the format, and that it's just a kind of a matter of time until like the right shell is found. Like you guys are talking about Shark Typhoon, removal, stop being so damn greedy. Like you've got like a ridiculous, built-in combo machine. So I can see it. I can see things getting good.
I just feel like if you put Omnath, right, and you put it next to any other card in Zendikar, what's the second best card in the format? Compare it to Omnath and compare them on power level.
Yeah, I mean the card does insane things, for sure. There's no doubt about it. But I mean, haven't there been broken cards that wasn't everyone just complaining about Uro a second ago?
Yeah, I mean that's the best argument. That because Uro's also kind of busted. Uro's also a busted card, and it's still in the format. So like we can't really say if Omnath I think is like just a really good card, but who knows what's gonna happen?
Yeah, we just need to find out. I think the format's pretty healthy. Frankly, I'm like pretty happy with it. I think there's a multiple we got mono green, we got Gruul, we got blue white control, we've got Omnath combo decks. We got blue-black rogues a little bit. That's a pretty good format already. We haven't even started to explore a lot of other options. I don't know. I'm happy with standard right now.
Little mono red action.
Yeah, a little mono red action. I feel like mono red's tough though. I feel like that's too under. I feel like you can't. I don't know. Going under Omnath felt hard. I tried some mono red. I tried some mono white. Going totally under Omnath seemed difficult to me. But some of the newer lists look a little bit better than what I was trying. So
you'll have to make that statement in Croaky's chat because I was watching him yesterday win some matches with mono.
No, I want to live.
That's true.
So Clover. Let's talk about Clover. I tried Clover first, and I maintain that Aaron Gertler is a crazy man. He claimed that Clover had come back to life last format after the bans when Sultai was dominant. I played a few games on ladder, and Sultai was like, "No, this is miserable." And sure enough, he plays the deck very well, and he had a very good plan against Sultai. And I went back at it, and I had a little bit of success, but it was still, the matchup was just miserable. This format, same thing. Sleeved up my Clovers. It's like, I'm going to take some people to town, and got Omnath dropped on my face repeatedly. And I found the matchup once again to be absolutely miserable because you have very little interaction. That being said, though, I understand a little bit more about how the Omnath deck works now. There are cards like Mystical Dispute, maybe Red Cat Melee, things that you could try out to keep Omnath away. My take, though, is that Clover is a little bit slow and a little bit dirtily, and just eventually the Omnath decks go over the top of you, either with Omnath or with the 7-mana, what's it called? The big spell.
The Ultimatum.
Yeah, either with Omnath or with Ultimatum. It's really it's hard to kill them before they can get to 7 mana with an Adventurous deck. So if they Ultimatum, they just go off, right? Even just one Omnath and a bunch of lands is kind of ridiculous. So I don't know. I found the matchup to be very tough, and I've been winning with the aggro deck, so I've kind of just stuck there. I want Adventures to be good. Obviously, love that deck, but I would advise people against taking it to a tournament just yet.
I have a list for Seth, and I think I told you about it. Orsov Yorion. I think you should give it a try and give your spin on it, because let's say we say the best way to deal with Omnath deck is by not letting the card in the game, right? So we just discard it.
What if they draw it?
So yeah, that's okay. That's a bug in Arena. I know it really well.
Yeah, I mean that's the classic problem with the black-white deck is you can force them to play off the top of their deck, but then
they always draw it. You
top deck a discard spell at the wrong time, and their deck is all gas, so they're gonna. I don't know.
I was 1 win away from the qualification, right? That happened to me twice in the best of 3. It's a bit sad, right? It's what it is, but I think it's okay. You can try it.
So I have 2 stories regarding the Clover deck. One, I tried playing with a version of Clover, and then I just got like Ember Shield Breaker, and I thought I was just like, all right, I'm not like people are still like playing Shield Breakers and
Oh my
stuff,
god.
and I was like, okay, like this isn't gonna work for me. But now people are trying to play Omnath in the Clover decks. You don't have to play Clover and Omnath apart. You can just have everything
that.
apparently. I don't know.
I also saw a Yorion list there's a Yorion Omnath list currently sitting on number 1 on the ladder by Manohito, a Japanese player, which is crazy. It's Yorion Omnath also now.
What?
Where will this go?
I mean, those cards do work together technically.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, hear me out. We get a Yorion. We get an Omnath. We get an Uro. You throw in an Ember Cleave. You call it a
Oh no!
Clover,
Oh,
Clover.
no.
We need the Clover again.
But I wouldn't be surprised if we see Omnath at the top of people's curves. Like you can put in a bunch of these new lands and just play an aggro deck with Omnath. Like
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding. Like I don't think people have done it yet. But like, all right, turn 4. Like I've got my Questing Beast and I've got my Omnath. Like whatever.
Omnath with Embercleave. We're gonna see it tomorrow.
4-color aggro, like
Can't lose.
bash people.
What would you guys recommend for someone that's looking to play in a tournament this weekend? Like today, tomorrow. This is coming out Thursday. So, like the next few days, if you had to register a deck for, say, the SCG 10K or a for one of the qualifiers for the SCG 10K, what would you recommend people play?
I would go the approach we actually had on the tournament, right? Beat the deck or beat the deck. Right now, I think player base wise, percentage wise, at least it feels 50% play Omnath, right? So either you join the ranks and have looking for the better mirror match, or go a deck that targets it and have okay matchup against the rest. So that's the approach I would take here. I would not play red. Gruul, I watched you as well. I think Gruul looks nice. I don't have too much testing with it, so I never played Omnath, but from the look, it's a good deck. It gives you a good chance of winning. It's complicated though, I think, to really play it at the max, so you definitely should have reps with Omnath. But Omnath seems like a good deck right now.
My issue with this format is it's so skewed towards one deck, and the mirror is just kind of like it's just stupid in a lot of respects. But if you're fine with just playing the best deck and playing mirror matches, like play Omnath, that's fine. I do think it's the best deck, but at the same time, I would probably, I'm gonna work on other things. Blue white to me. I may try Danny's list because I don't think the list that I've been playing is quite good enough, to be honest with you. If there's changes that I can make, like adding more counters, maybe Confounded Conundrum, even though it just seems so underpowered to me. So I think that's my next step is blue white, and if Jason proves me wrong with some Gruul. I know that's probably what you're gonna say, right?
Yeah, I mean, how do I not, right? I went like 9-1 in the Bash Bros tournament. I went like 8 or 9-2 yesterday on the ladder, with like one of my losses just being a straight punt, and the other loss, I think, just being a loose keep at the end. The deck's just great. I smash Omnath. Like I look forward to playing the Omnath matchup. I'm like, oh, good, another Omnath deck. Like it's a great matchup. At least with how the decks are lined up currently. You throw in some Clovers along with some Stomps and some Brazen Borrowers. that could get dicey. Mono Green also, Room T has been on an absolute tear, and I believe that the Mono Green and the Gruul deck are very, very similar, right? Similar plans. Play a big fatty, smash through them, disrupt them a bit. And so I think both of those decks are very legitimate choices. I think that, especially for this weekend, like I said, I've been doing amazing with Gruul. Other people have done well with it as well in the qualifiers I've seen. It's basically been Gruul Omnath have been like the 4-0 lists, at least from yesterday. And I mean, between the two, Gruul has a good matchup against Omnath. There's going to be a lot of Omnath. So I think Gruul's got to be a good choice. It has good matchups across the board too. Sultai felt good. I think my one loss was to a Yorion, might have been Omnath Yorion, actually, that Corey Ballmeister, my nemesis, played. And that matchup was like, okay, it felt a little more like 50-50-ish. But everything else just felt great. I haven't felt like a dog to anything. So I got to go Gruul.
One little side note that you may not remember or you may not know is that I played Gruul Adventures at a Pro Tour. The last Pro Tour I played Gruul Adventures in the Oko format, and Javier did also. And I went, I believe, 7-3 with the deck. So I'm not afraid to play it, and I do think that I'm very happy. At least there's a replacement for Stomping Grounds in the new land, because without that, the mana would just be way too bad to play it. But
yeah. For me, also Gruul, I think, is a list I would play because I like adventures. I just like an aggro deck that also gets some card advantage somehow, so you don't dry out too fast. And with Gruul Adventures, you definitely have that. But I would also go for blue-white because it's the deck I played the most. But I think there's a sleeper deck, and I think we should maybe talk about this briefly. You saw the Demir control lists by Nassif, maybe. Really great deck. I just did that and added Uros. So it's Sultai again, and it looks really good. I didn't lose a single game. I mean, I'm 4-0, it's not too much yet, but it feels good.
Okay, to wrap up, our recommendations are Omnath, Gruul, or some sort of control deck, maybe blue-white, or possibly Demur, maybe splashing green, something that controls Omnath. I think those are good. Either any one of those three is probably a good choice for this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk a little limited, just because I know that some of us have been playing it. Obviously, I know that there's players out here listening that may not want to hear about it, and that's fine if you just want to stop listening. But just a little bit of limited, because I do think that limited is a pretty important part of the arena landscape these days. I was happy to see. I actually jumped in a sealed, and I hadn't played sealed in I don't know the last time I actually did a sealed. So I've been drafting more because I do enjoy draft more, and this is a fun format. It's just refreshing to me to be able to cast cards with kicker and limited and get little value edges from your creature types. The party mechanic is everything. You can tell that there was effort put into this limited format. Every creature type on each card is so important that it makes you think more about the cards. It's not like a core set draft where it's okay, this card is good because it's a 3-mana 3/3 or whatever. There's a lot more to it. Even though yes, there's vanilla 3-mana 3/3 in green, it's also a warrior. So thinking about all of these things, and then evaluating the cards has also been somewhat challenging. There's been some mythics and rares that have been hard for me to value, whereas some uncommons, I think by far my most drafted card has been Roost of Drakes, which is the 1 blue, and then you can kicker it for another blue and 2 colors to make a 2/2 if you kick it, but then every time you play a kicker spell, you get another Drake. And I've just really liked the blue decks as far as my success rate. Definitely just having that ability to kind of have those late game cards has been pretty important for me.
So yeah, I went to a paper sealed event, and I usually always go to the pre-release event. I mean, now it's Corona time, but I had to go, man. It's always the new format, a new set comes out, sealed is just one of the most funniest thing. No one has a clue. Everyone is sitting there trying to figure out how the hell do I put those cards together? And I ended up Demir Rogues. My pool was pretty okay at this 3-mana 1+ 3 flyer that ends up a 5/3 in the end with lifelink, death touch, flying, and that carried me to the final. That single card, I had a lot of fun. Just also not knowing what the opponent is doing next turn is so fun because I was not prepared. Right, suddenly there's a flash in Rogue. You have a lot of flash, and they don't get it. You just flash something in, you trade, and they just confused. So I really enjoyed it. For me, so far one of the most enjoyable sealed experience I had.
I think the Rogues deck is really interesting because you've got a decent number of mill effects. Like you even have like the 1 mana O3 crab, like that is like you've got like these cards that are hard to evaluate, but then you've got like a bunch of cards that value your opponent having 8 or more cards in their graveyard, right? But then it's like, okay, so this creature gets better because you have 8 or more cards in your graveyard, right? But then like probably over half your deck has gone through at that point. So like why not just like rather than attack them, just go for the full on mill you out plan. So it's like to me there's a balance there for sure.
It feels also like really random sometimes because there's a matchup where I just milled all the bombs away. Like it's ridiculous. I mill the bombs, they draw land. I mill the good cards, they draw land. And then you just win like this because it's a 40 card deck, right? And if you just hit the bombs, it's like a really good removal, technically. So those mill attacks are actually really nice in sealed.
Yeah, sometimes you just randomly hit really important cards. Like if they have a splash and you just like hit both sources of that color or something and they just can't play their stuff. But yeah, it's also just like hard to combat, right? Like sometimes like if your deck is like not particularly aggressive, your opponent's milling you, like man, you're just up against it. And it can be a really good win condition. The crab especially, that thing kills really, really fast. Yeah,
my opponent had 2 of them, and I was like, the other day I was just like, all
right, double crab. 1 mana 0.
6 turns. 6 turns.
Yeah, man, I haven't played limited. Like I won a limited Grand Prix at the end of 2018. And it's like my favorite format. I like fly to the Grand Prix often that were like the ones that they'd always have one like the week after the pre-release or whatever, when the format was fresh, like Danny was saying, and no one knew what was going on. Like, oh, loved it. So fun. And literally since, so what is that? About a year and a half, at least, almost 2 years coming up, I've played almost no limited, almost zero, because there just haven't been any tournaments for it. And I've just been preparing for all the standard and historic tournaments that have been going on. And oh my God, has it been amazing to play limited again. Like I feel like I'm falling in love with Magic all over again. Like it started to become work kind of, you know, it was like a little bit almost like toxic, like just like kind of bashing my head against the wall, like getting burnt out, you know, playing the same matchups over and over, same decks, same archetypes. And here we are, like something totally different, totally new. Just like Seth was saying, you know, getting those like little incremental advantages, not like, oh, turn 4, I'm dead. Okay, next game, that you get from like some of the busted constructed formats and stuff. Like get all these, you have to play Magic again is kind of what it feels like to me. And I just absolutely loved it.
I just have such an itch for competitive limited now. It's just like,
right?
It's almost driving me crazy. I just want to play. I want to play like a $10 event. Like I don't care.
So bad.
Like I just want to. I really hope that in the future. I know there's probably some. I think the reason, and this is me just kind of theory crafting now. The reason why they haven't had events like competitive events like for actual dollars on Arena yet for limited, because I think that a lot of us, including myself, are like, yes, I want that. But like they pretty recently, I guess it was a few months ago now, but they introduced the 8-player drafts, which was like A+. Thank God. Yes. We don't have to draft with bots anymore because that was just miserable for me. But now Arena being having limited, and I feel like still there's probably some integration where they have to just figure out, okay, like how to run a limited tournament on Arena. But yeah, I think I'm really hoping that they do, because that would be super fun.
What do you think of this? What if like MTG Melee, like you joined a tournament on MTG Melee for whatever, $10 free, whatever. And then tournament starts and they just give you a random sealed, like, you know how they have sealed generators, random sealed generators, like it's easy to do. And so you get your deck list, and then you have to import it into Arena. You have to build a deck with it, and then they just pair you. And so I guess you would have to agree that you'd have to craft any cards that you have, but whatever. You only get 6 rares anyway. You'll probably have a lot of them. Most of us do. And then there you go. Like your tournament, like sealed's good to go. I guess you can't draft though.
You could also do the same thing with the Arena tournaments they've had, right? Like you could just have, okay, seven wins in your sealed gets you to day 2, and or even theoretically you could do the same thing with draft, and then on day 2 you like I think it's harder to like match specific players up, but if you're just doing like a open weekend of limited, it just feels like maybe it shouldn't be that far from happening, hopefully.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? With the opens, like it would be easy to just give everyone a sealed and then just be like, exactly, you go play your matches until you have enough wins or losses, just like they've done. And they did announce when they did the first open, that they were going to do limited ones, and it was a matter of when, not if. So it seems like it's on their docket. But I mean, they obviously have a lot of things going on. Like I mean, there was the Zendikar launch didn't get off to the best of starts. The last couple times, it seems like when they roll out a new set, they have some issues, some fires to put out and stuff. So it makes sense that there's a lot going on for them.
And I just want to, while we're talking about limited, and we've also been talking about constructed, I want to talk about my favorite part of Zendikar, which is just the lands that are also spells. Like I think that is, for me, the best part about the set. It's kind of striking both in deck building. It also helps. I don't think people think about it enough in terms of getting mana screwed, right? Because if you're less likely to get mana screwed if you're able to essentially put more lands in your deck that function as something else. So you're less likely, like you just have more lands, but you also have more spells. So it's like the best of both worlds in that sense. So I think it was a really good, like this was a very good idea. It's been great for limited. Like I value the lands that do something else just super high in limited. Like I don't think there's a single one that I can think of that I'm not willing to play, to be honest with you, because they're all lands. Like their downside is a land, which you would already play. So like there's no unplayable lands because like whatever it is, even if it's just a 1/3 creature or whatever, it's like, okay, I'm still going to play that. So it's been a little bit more tricky and constructed, I guess, from a deck building perspective of how many of them you want to play, just because they do some of them come into the play tapped. And then there's the mythic ones that are just like, you have to pay some life for those. But yeah, like it's just, I think that's really been a positive for me for the set.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There was a lot of critique from multiple people on Twitter that they think that the resource system of Magic is a little bit old, right? Where you have like this mana screw possibility a lot, and you need the lands in your decks. And I think with this, actually, they try to maybe go against it a bit. So you should get less mana screwed if you build your deck correctly. And it's also important, you cannot look at one of those cards like it's a land. It's like you said, and I think even Ben Stark made a tweet about it. You have to look at it differently, right? You play your lands. Sure, you can maybe say -1/2 if you play a lot of them, but you should look at them like it's just an extra. Because if you want to play spell first, it's still not a land. But it's really tricky in deck constructing. But I think it's good towards this resource management that was a topic a lot in Magic.
Yeah, I would like to see it become like an evergreen thing. Like I would like them to just do this like in all the sets or a lot of them. It's literally that good. Even if it's just like a few cards, like I don't know, 1 to 3 in each color or something. It doesn't take a lot, but it's just like they're just so good.
I think that people have been talking so much about Omnath, they've been forgetting about all like this. This has been such a great aspect of the set. So that's been like a real positive for me, and I agree with you. Like I'm like, well, how did this happen sooner? But now that it's happened, like you can't go back. Like you got to keep doing it, right?
Yeah, it's been great. And to talk a little bit more about limited, you were talking about how you like the blue decks. I really like the blue decks too. That Drake card with kicker is absolutely insane. All the blue cards with kicker, they provide so much value. Blue white, like weird party good stuff pile of cards deck has been great for me. Also like blue black, like rogues mill. I've had like multiple 3-0s with both of those kind of strategies. Also with some aggressive red decks, red white, red black. Those have been great. Oh man, it feels good to be playing limited again.
I agree.
Same, yeah. I'm probably gonna actually stream it once now. Like, really just playing that pre-release got me the taste to play Limited more, and I always get trolled for my bronze rank in Limited, so I think it's time to put in time there once.
I just stream it because I enjoy it. Like if I want to play it, I'm playing it, and so I stream. I don't like I'm not gonna stream unless I really want to do something, and you can tell if I'm drafting. Like that's something that I'm just out there having fun, and it's a fun format. So yeah, I'm looking forward. I might even just hop in a draft on stream after we get done. So. So we want to say thank you to everyone. This is our first episode of the Planeswalker podcast, the first of many. So before we go, we do want to say thank you to everyone who is watching. I want to say thank you to everyone who is watching me personally on the Mythic Invitational. I got a ton of positive support. We've even got some people who have already joined our Patreon, and we have also, if you want to check out our Twitter, at Planeswalker Pod, definitely do that, because right now we don't have a sponsor. So any help that you can give us is going to help us continue to create this content. And I think, Danny, do you want to tell us who joined this week on the Patreon?
Yeah, so we just started the Patreon, and it's actually day one, and we already got some Planeswalker in our team. And I want to thank Foxy, Incognito, Lucy, Nameless Mutt, Oppo, Puppet Master 26, Smash Checks, and Time Frank. So thanks a lot for everyone to join us already. It's been one day, and we all looking really forward to make this a great community where we all can have fun together and learn and get better, and also win tournaments like those two guys here, left and right of me.
All right, yeah. Thanks everyone again, and we'll be back next Thursday.
Thanks, guys. Awkward sign off. That's one for the blue.